Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar today. We'll be talking about why law firms need to move to the cloud today. And our cute little parentheses is hint remote work. I'm Larita Baugh. I'm the CMO of Affinity, which is a NetGain company. I'm joined today by Bill Sorensen, our Vice President of Product. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Larita.
And then also Crystal Cruz, who's one of our cloud consultants on the legal side.
Good morning,
Before we
Larita.
get started, good morning, Chris. Before we get started, I just want to cover a couple of logistics here. You will be on mute. We encourage you, please, to submit questions in the Q&A box. It's probably on the right side of your screen in the GoToWebinar control panel. Please feel free to go ahead and submit those whenever they occur to you. If we can, we'll do it within the context of our conversation, or certainly we'll leave some time at the end of the webinar to handle them. The webinar is being recorded and will be available for replay after the event, and we'll also make the slides available after the webinar as well. Let's go ahead to the agenda slide. So we've got a pretty packed agenda for you guys. We want to cover 5 core topics. The first is some of the cloud myths that have cautioned people in the past from relying on the cloud. We'll talk through some of those concerns that many people have and why or whether to be concerned about them today. We'll also discuss the benefits of cloud adoption, how to de-risk a cloud migration, and then top 10 considerations before you decide to make the switch. Finally, we'll end with the demonstration of the Affinity Cloud Platform. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bill. Bill?
Great, thanks, Larita. Well, let's jump in and just start with this idea of cloud myths, what people kind of think about the cloud and what the realities are. So as we look at this first question, how secure is the public cloud? How does it compare to having that server or that equipment, computer equipment in our offices? And as we look at this, the realization that in today's world, whether it's Amazon AWS, Google's cloud, Microsoft's cloud, the dramatic amount of security and encryption and really cost that's spent by those organizations to secure the cloud has been just phenomenal as an improvement. When you think about the equipment on your computer floor in your office, you have external people coming in, maybe to clean the office, those kinds of things. That equipment is very, very exposed. And as we see these public cloud, and you can go online and kind of look at what's inside those computer centers, it's just a dramatic amount of security around physical security and electronic security. So we've seen that myth really go away a number of years ago. Next question, and this is a question that hits home for a lot of people, is really, what about uptime and performance? Is it predictable? What can I expect? And with the dramatic amount of redundancy that the public cloud offers, there's so much going on in the background to keep performance and your availability up that they're able to provide really service levels beyond any kind of local equipment or even private clouds. And so we're seeing that there's just a dramatic amount of uptime. And really performance, you end up paying for what you use in this public cloud, so you get to really understand performance directly. And so we're seeing customers of ours really performing extremely well and being up all the time. The next concern is really around your data in the cloud. A number of years ago, there was this myth that you put your data in the cloud, it's no longer yours, you can't get it back. That's really not true at all. The data ends up completely encrypted. It's encrypted in transit, encrypted at rest. It's your data. All the agreements say it's your data. All the practicality of Ultimately, doing anything with your data is up to you. And so that's really ends up protecting you from other people having access to this. And I know we've really seen a dramatic amount of improvements over the last number of years around security as well as it relates to things like ransomware. We'll talk about that in another slide. The bottom one is actually a really good one. I've heard people who have gotten surprised by the huge cloud costs every month. And this is a good example of people who've done it themselves. There's a kind of an interesting story of, an organization, maybe a larger organization is interested in the cloud. The technology group jumps in and says, oh, this is all easy. We can, set up servers. We can, do things. Then they get the invoice and they're shocked by how much they spent. And that's where an organization like Affinity really lets you bank on a consistent cost for your services. So we wrap that up and help control those costs. Chris, what are your thoughts around any of these myths as you've talked to customers?
When it comes to pricing, when you look at the two models of having managing your own infrastructure, some of the big challenges is having enough of those resources to accommodate, whether it be the amount of personnel or the amount of compute power to run applications. And sometimes during the course of the year, that's variable. And it seems like with traditional infrastructure, you have to sort of budget for the highest amount of usage or the highest amount of personnel,
right.
And that's just very difficult from a price standpoint. It's sort of like if you're going to only pull a large motorhome twice a year, but you still had to have a 1-ton truck all through the year, and that'd be kind of overkill if you only need that for 1 or 2 days out of the year. With the cloud model,
yeah,
you can really you can budget for exactly the type of resources that you need at any given time, and you can scale up and scale down.
Yeah, I think we've sure seen that in situations where a firm has growth, or during COVID, we saw some contraction as well, and people were able to get savings as they needed to contract personnel during that time. So that's a good point. Well, let's look at the benefits that we see with cloud adoption. Just as we were talking, the cost structure, I like to think about it. Historically, we had to kind of try and plan for 3 years, pre-buy capacity for that 3 years, kind of like that truck you were talking about, Chris. And then hope we were right. And typically, IT organizations, didn't understand necessarily the growth of the business, and so halfway through that time period might have needed to buy more capacity. And that's where we see this next one, OpEx to CapEx, come in as well. With operational expenses, you pay for that month what you're using for that month. Again, provides that flexibility. We talked a little bit about the improved security, really the amount of investment that somebody like Amazon with AWS has spent in order to provide an extremely secure and completely encrypted environment is something that typical organizations could never do themselves. The amount of staff they have that are watching the environment and really protecting you as small to mid-sized organizations, is just something you can't do yourself. So that's been a huge, huge benefit as well. I think the productivity gains really are tied to the ability to be up all the time, connect all the time, work all the time, really from anywhere, and to do that securely. So whether you're at this point working from home, whether you're at the courts, whether you're even in your car at times, the need to get connected and do the work you need to do is always available in a solution like this. So that's been key. it really does do this. So this strategic alignment of the IT with the business. We've talked about this for years, and as we talk to IT leaders within firms, we really try and stress how important it is to align the IT strategies with the business strategies. So whether that business strategy is one of growth, of firm acquisition, of flexibility to go into new markets, the focus of IT needs to be aligned with that. And the cloud really provides a dramatic amount of flexibility where historically, IT was late to the game in things like mergers and acquisitions. And so really the ability to be flexible, to have capacity really on demand, and then to really look at being a tighter business partner with the firm and the firm's partners is a key piece for the IT organization. The last one I want to touch on, and it's a key one, is disaster recovery and business continuity. And we kind of saw that happen in March as the world changed as we know it. And in an extremely short amount of time, we moved everybody to remote work. Many of the firms had a partial investment in the ability to work remotely and so have had people work remotely. Some of the larger firms had some infrastructure in place to support that. But when you went from 10% of the people working remotely to now 90 or 100% working remotely, it was a huge difference. And so that business continuity or disaster recovery plan kind of got exercised at that point. Now with solutions like Affinity provides, you've got disaster recovery capability not only from your office to the cloud and running in the cloud, but from location to location in the cloud. That dramatic redundancy and productivity allows that to be a realistic thing now. So that's been huge. Chris, as you look at these and maybe a couple examples of customers you're working with, what are a couple of the examples that you can talk about?
A couple of pain points that seem to come up often are around aging infrastructure with older servers, or just the burden of maintaining servers. And I know a lot of people think, well, it's always better to own a home than to rent. But it depends on the home, and I'm using that as kind of an analogy when you're owning servers and what's involved in maintaining that, from annual maintenance to warranty renewals on physical servers, software renewals, and eventually if something breaks or it gets to the point where it just can't be updated anymore. And we all know, eventually hardware cannot be updated, and then you're having to make a choice, either shell out a tremendous amount of cash to buy new hardware. And whereas with the cloud structure, the cloud model, you can really leverage the economies of scale that companies like AWS and other public cloud companies have developed just a massive cloud infrastructure, and are able to break it down where it's really affordable and really take some of that all that cost off of your shoulders, and really a lot of headache stuff that keeps you up at night.
Yeah, I think the other thing to point out, and that's a good segue, is as you think about performance and capacity, when you buy and own equipment and then the equipment ages over, let's say it's 3 to 5 years, your users are stuck with that performance. The applications get more complicated, the environments are more complicated, that performance can never increase because you've made that investment in equipment. In the public cloud, at any point in time, you move up to the next level of server or resource, and you get dramatic performance improvements immediately. And literally you're paying just for that tiny incremental change instead of huge significant changes. And so once you've moved, you're on this performant platform that allows you that flexibility, no matter where your business goes application-wise, to be able to provide the best solution around resource, the best performance for your users. Let's move on and talk about risk in really areas where firms see risk and where moving to a cloud, to the public cloud, can really, really help de-risk the organization. We talk a lot about risk around the firm when we talk about security and risk management, and as we do that, there's a couple of things, couple of tenets that come into play, and one is simplification, and that's both around data security, structure around data, as well as the applications you're using. We sure have seen some firms where they've acquired smaller firms over time, and then there's kind of two models to handle that. Some let those smaller firms just continue to run with the application set they've got. Others tend to be a little bit more strategic and then centralize on single platforms. And that's allowed, help from different, literally regions around the country to be able to support other areas by using the same application set, so the same set of applications. It's a great time to kind of look at that as you're thinking about moving to the cloud. The other piece is identifying a partner, a real partner who knows your industry, knows your applications, is extremely familiar with how you as a firm work, and then be able to leverage that to make that move smooth. That's a key piece to this. We used to think that, moving to the cloud was a 12-month exercise, and today we're not seeing that at all. We're seeing that happen within literally 45 to 60 days, moving a whole organization, no matter what the size. So there's great tools to help make that smooth. We talked a little bit about cost. The nice thing about a solution that is a partner-driven solution is the costs are extremely predictable. It's a usage-based cost model. So you have a certain number of staff, it costs X per staff, and then over time, as you use more data, you literally are paying for what you use. I think that's been the goal for every kind of directional piece around IT that we've been looking for a long time. So instead of the director of IT coming to the partners and saying, gee, I need, $300,000 for this new storage that we're going to use over the next 5 years, you don't see that anymore. So it's very, very predictable. Next, this is a key one. As you find a partner with that industry experience, understand that they're the experts at this. As a small IT organization or a firm with, 1 to 4 or 5 people in IT, they can't be experts at everything. And this allows you to use somebody who does this as their job, as their business. And, it's not the first rodeo for them. It's literally hundreds and hundreds of firms that they've moved. Chris, as a funny thing, I looked back, I guess it was a couple years ago, and kind of counted the number of organizations I was involved in that had moved to the cloud, and somewhere just over 230. So, we've got a big team that has really been involved in moving firms to the cloud for a long time, and very, very successfully. So that was kind of interesting to think about. The last item is, the difference between kind of this public cloud and private cloud. And I'm really, this is an important one. As you think about, one of our salespeople uses this analogy. As you think about a private cloud, it's kind of your infrastructure shared with a firm that owns that infrastructure, typically a smaller, mid-sized firm. And it's almost like an apartment building. And you've got one of the apartments in the apartment building. Let's say you're on third floor, and maybe there's 300 apartments in the building. And so you share a variety of things with the rest of the people in the apartment. And, should there be an incident where, somebody's smoking down on first floor, their apartment gets on fire, you're included in that fire. And we've seen that happen with ransomware in private clouds. We've seen that happen with other security incidences, as well as with performance and outages. So that's the different piece here. In the public cloud, it's really like you get your own house. Yep, it's in a big development, but the ability to have your own complete separate space that isn't at risk of security issues by others is a huge piece here. Let's move on to some of the considerations before you switch. And Chris, just as I'll have you maybe start this slide, as you have been talking to people over a significant amount of time, when you're hearing what their top one or two issues are that you're trying to talk to about addressing, what comes to mind as the top one or two items?
I would have to say one, data security, and probably the one I hear the most is just managing the change. A lot of organizations, they're afraid, like, if we make this move, how smooth is it going to be? How much training is my staff going to need? There could be partners in the firm that have been there a long time. They've been doing the same thing, the same type of infrastructure and way of logging into and working for a number of years, and they don't like change. And so managing that, is scary for some of the firm administrators, because they don't want to be able to try to roll something out and then it just ends up being a disaster and no one can figure it out. And that's the main thing that really kind of ends up being a paralysis through analysis.
Sure. Let's talk about the items that kind of drive this switch or this change. And then we'll talk to how does it feel from a user and firm side. So we're seeing a lot of productivity pieces being addressed, this ability to work from anywhere, anytime. We've talked about infrastructure challenges. Are you getting at end of life of equipment? Or with this move for everybody home, capacity around the ability to support them remotely has been a big, huge piece. The other thing is it's important to look at your contractual commitments. If you're using an outside organization now, what does that look like? As we look at team efficiency, those are pieces around how you're communicating and working within your organization, how you work with the courts, how you work with clients, and really looking at ways that you can improve that. And then in these future initiatives, this has been an interesting time again since March, where some of the initiatives have changed. The first initiatives were immediately full ability to work from remotely, ability to adjust our workforce up or down. And then now as we open up just a little bit, and again, we don't know what the future has to offer, but these future initiatives may include things that are the ability to add new tools, new document management capabilities or document creation capabilities. And so the cloud lets you really take advantage of technology that can provide that. Let's go on to the next slide where we look at really this partner mindset for the next 5. So again, and this is one we see constantly, is industry application expertise is extremely important. Many of you have worked with others, in whether it's in your personal life or in business, where the generalist or the expert is really an option for you around something. And by picking that expert who knows your industry, knows your applications, their ability to deliver and really give you confidence that it's going to work. I mean, as Chris was talking about change being hard and concerning, the ability to talk to other firms that have had similar situations, the ability to look at what the user impact is, by choosing somebody with cloud expertise in your industry, that's a huge guarantee that the delivery happens as expected. And I know we're going to do a demo in a few minutes here, but really as we look at that user impact and how do you make this change simple for users, the ability for them to work in this remote world in a way that's extremely similar to what they're used to helps that dramatically. The other pieces to consider in a partner is really this commitment to security, business continuity plans help in that, and really this partner mindset that really changes them from a vendor who doesn't know much about your organization or much about your business to somebody who's a partner that's interested in your strategic direction business-wise, and then has the ability to support, the initiatives around that, whether that's growth, variability, additional services. That's where having somebody with that industry expertise comes in. Chris, your thoughts about this on the partner side?
I think when I think about a partnership mindset and understanding the industry, I think of all the applications that we support, from document management systems, implementation partners for iManage and ProLaw, and many other practice management software that we're familiar with and we've been using for 15 plus years with law firms. So to be able to have that tribal knowledge and that history of these applications and how as they've developed and new ones have come down the pike, it really for a firm to come in and ask, do you support this stuff? Do you understand this? Yeah, we do. We understand the business, and that's really important. And not only do we understand it, but we use a lot of these in our own organization. We use our own platform that I'm going to demo here in a few minutes, and we also use iManage, our document management. Let's add one question here, and we've touched on it a little bit as we move to the next slide. Let's go back to this March timeframe when the decision was made that we had to support everyone working remotely, and we had to do it immediately. So we saw 3 different approaches to this. First approach was an organization that had a really small footprint of remote users, casual remote use. Otherwise, everybody was in the office. And whether you're a 50-person firm or a 200-person firm, this is really how you were set up and what the expectations were. Probably had a good disaster recovery plan in place. It was difficult to test. And when the move to home happened, the direction was to send everyone home with this idea of VPNs. So everyone could connect to the office. They could kind of drag documents back toward their homes. Security was okay. Maybe you weren't doing multi-factor authentication, that 2-factor authentication.
but you could possibly support this group. And then what happened was, your connections to the internet that everyone was coming across were too small. So all of a sudden, everybody's working slowly. They're working, but working slowly. So we saw one set of people in the industry do that. We saw another who had a better infrastructure for remote work. So maybe they were supporting 10 or 20% of their organization remotely. And so they were asked to support 100% immediately. And so there was a bunch of scrambling to get additional servers, additional equipment, get those configured and get people up and running. And in many situations that took, a few weeks to maybe that first month and a half, but then, people got working remotely. When we look at Affinity's clients and firms that were on the Affinity Cloud platform, they made the decision, let's say on a Sunday, and everybody worked remotely on that Monday. Many of the organizations kept a really small footprint in the office to handle documents that were coming in and some of the shuffling of business around payments and things like that. But otherwise, everybody moved quickly to home. So that's what we saw in this, adoption of the cloud. People had adopted the cloud earlier and were able to have that flexibility. It's now months later. We've learned a lot, as an industry, and we sure are seeing people make this decision to move to the cloud quicker and quicker as it looks as this is here to stay, and this ability to work remotely now is almost a given within the industry. Well, let's move on and talk about the Affinity Cloud platform. Really, this is a hosted desktop solution provided with Affinity and Amazon AWS, typically with that on-premise environment that many people are still in. You've got equipment locally. There's performance issues, access issues that we've talked about. You've prepaid for that capacity and have that aging equipment that you've been on for years and years. We did see that, some firms kind of kick the can down the road of equipment upgrades, knowing that at some point they'd move to the cloud and hoping to, not invest in infrastructure. And that approach worked. It's just that the performance characteristics of that was tough on the firm. When we look at the Affinity Cloud platform, that user experience is virtually identical to the on-premise model. You get that higher productivity due to access anytime, all the time. And then you really get a massive uplift in security as well. So by moving, you end up really having this be the last place you need to move to. You've got the flexibility around capacity and performance as you grow or change within your organization. You pay for what you use, and really it allows you this business flexibility so that IT can align with your strategic initiatives better. And it runs everything. So that's the benefit, is really your users have that same experience they're used to in an environment that's extremely secure, performant, and flexible. Now, Chris, I know you're going to do a demo. Let's go ahead and fire that next section up.
Sure. So I mentioned earlier that Affinity, we use our own ACP platform, and we have dozens and dozens of employees that are spread out from the West Coast to Pittsburgh, Minnesota, South Central Texas, where I'm at. And so we use it. And I remember when I was hired on, I was up and running within 24 hours or less. And so this is the icon. It's much like logging into your bank. Everybody's logged into their bank on the computer. It's very simple. I'm going to enter in my username and password. We also utilize a second layer of security, multi-factor authentication. We use a specific agent software called Duo. That's D-U-O. I can either open the app or I can ask to get a push notification on my mobile phone. Go ahead and log in here.
Chris, I think you spelled your name. You had an extra D in your name.
Ah, that's what. I'm one of those click-clack typers. Sorry.
There we go. Yeah, and Duo is one of the two-factor authentication that works with your cell phone so easily. You get a notification, you say approve, and you're in. There's a number of different ways to have that set up.
That way, if someone happens to steal your username and password, they can't log in unless they physically have your phone as well.
And your phone unlocked and those kinds of things. Yeah,
Correct.
It's that level of security is what the FBI has said for now. I think it's like the fourth year in a row is the best level of personal security to get into anything. So whether it's your ACP platform or your Gmail or other things, having that ability to validate who you are is key. I know we've seen internet speed from homes be an issue as well as they're getting back into the offices. And sometimes that's a impediment for remote workers. I know here where I am, Chris, I'm a Comcast user at home, and many times we've got a variety of different performance there. The nice thing with a cloud-based desktop environment is really all the performance around the applications. Once you're in, are really happening within the platform, and only the screen displays come back.
One thing I saw in March for our customers that are on the ACP platform, the only biggest challenge they really had was just maybe some of the users didn't have appropriate hardware at home, like a more modern desktop or a more modern laptop. So there was a big scramble for getting laptops and everything, and that was where the bottleneck was mainly. But actually getting them hooked up and on their platform was no problem at all. And so here we have our platform. So what we do, when I started, all they did is they installed my Office 365. We use iManage and a few other customer relationship management software. And for each employee, it's going to be different. Like maybe the administrator is going to have some other applications around billing and everything. But for my case, for maybe a lot of employees, they're going to have my Office 365, my email configured, and it's all pre-installed in the application. So when I open this up, it's just a basic Windows 10 desktop with my icons on there, my Outlook already set up and everything, and of course we use iManage. Opening documents, it's quick, fast, no lag. Excel, Outlook, these are all Office 365 is included in the platform.
And this really is a place where everyone would see their own applications, whether whether it was all the applications in an organization or just the ones they had access to, those are the ones that show up on their desktops. And so it's really customized to that person's access.
We got good internet between the AWS data center, plenty of bandwidth. So it's really, for managing change and getting somebody up and online if you're hiring a new employee, or if we're migrating 10 people or a 100-person organization, if it's pretty much the same application configuration, we'll get all those installed in the workspace before, get all the icons and download set up, and so all the users need to do is sign in, set up Duo on their phone. We'll walk everybody through that, and it's really very seamless. It's very simple. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, the session is encrypted. Everything is encrypted in the environment. Backups are encrypted, and so the security is significant.
And the data,
this
is another thing around security. If people are working from home, like if I'm working from this is my home computer, I'm not storing any data. This is the files that are in the virtual workspace. So it's configured just like it would if you're looking at your home computer and you're pulling up your C drive, your D drive, and everything else. I'm not storing any data physically on my computer. It's all stored in the cloud. So if I have to leave Affinity or something, I'm not storing. I'm doing all my work in Affinity's owned workspace.
Yeah. Yeah, and the firm gets the normal security capabilities around files and folders, so that moves over as well. Very, very straightforward, Chris, and thanks for doing this demo.
Oh, my pleasure.
Well, let's go on and talk just briefly about Affinity. I don't know, Larita, if you've seen any questions come in at this point.
Yeah, we've had a couple of questions come in. And so the first one is, what's the impact on the end user when you're making the migration?
Yeah, I can talk to that. So typically, it's the migration's done over a weekend. We preload all the applications, preload the data, and then do kind of a final cutover. There's no impact on email or kind of corporate communications, and it's just synchronizing that last amount of data. And so that's typically done on a weekend. That's a zero impact to the firm or the individual. And then the individual setting up, as Chris was talking about, Duo to get connected. We walk through that. If they're moving from local kind of email to Office 365, there's a little bit of training that goes with that and configuring your mobile devices. But otherwise, you're up and ready and working on Monday morning.
Great, thanks. A second question here. We only have 2 folks on the IT side at our organization. How much effort is it going to be for us to make this migration when we have an on-prem server?
Yeah, that's a good question. Typically, the focus is around connectivity to your existing organization, so the existing computer resources, so that we can do that migration, and then some assistance with application installs or getting those application credentials. And then some testing. We do a good amount of testing with key and core users so that final configuration matches expectations. But there's not a dramatic impact on the local IT. We really want to have a time where the environment's completely configured, people are logging in and testing it and validating that everything is where it should. And then using those IT resources for that coordination helps a lot. But other than that, it's mostly a support role.
Great, thank you. A third question here. Our firm is 100% remote through the end of the year. Is this something that can be done while we're working remotely?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question. And it is. Again, we move all that data behind the scenes, install the applications behind the scenes, and then work to help train those people so that they just connect to the new environment from their homes. And so we're seeing a lot of people actually take advantage of that, everyone's working remotely now situation to make this decision and move now.
And then here's a question. What happens if we merge with another firm? How quickly are we able to integrate the environments?
Another really good question. Really, it's just adding users, moving their data. If it's the same application set, it's just defining who has access to what. If they're bringing applications with, we install those applications as part of that, additional firm add. But it's extremely quick. We've seen that happen. I don't want to say overnight, but it felt like overnight. It just really, really quickly. If you think about it, it's just like adding new users to the environment, moving their data, and then any new applications that come over.
Great. One here about maintenance. Who handles maintenance? Is that something that we do, that we continue to do, or is that something that you guys would do?
We work that out with you. Typically, we're handling the maintenance, and we do a coordinated maintenance window with the firm, so that maintenance updates can be done by us in the background overnight, that type of thing. But that's really a organization by organization discussion. There are some specific applications where the internal IT group wants to do the updates and wants to be more involved, and so that discussion happens on what's best for the firm.
Great. That looks like all the questions that we have right now. Maybe it's worthwhile, Bill, to just cover at a high level, sort of more about Affinity.
Sure. So Affinity's been really, really around since the mid 80s as a support organization for law firms. It's extremely focused on law. We've got over 330 firms that are our customers and clients. We've adopted AWS, Amazon's AWS as the platform for ACP, our hosted environment, and it's extremely strong. So we've been very, very happy with performance and capabilities there, and certifications around compliance and security. Internally, we've got a lot of legal certifications, really focusing on the industry. So our expertise around applications is significant and continues to grow literally day by day. And we're backed by an extremely strong organization named NetGain. And so we've got a really good runway for growth as well. So we've been around for a long time in the industry, extremely close to law firms, and really, really focused on helping support their growth.
Great, thanks so much, appreciate it. Bill, Chris, appreciate your time presenting this presentation as well as the demonstration. And for everybody on the call, really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your days to listen to our webinar here on why law firms need to move to the cloud today. If you have any additional questions, or if we didn't get around to a question that you've asked, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to answer any questions or discuss how we can help support your organization. In the meantime, as I said, the recording will be available after the event as well as the slides. So please give me a shout back. Please let us know whether or not you have any questions, and you'll see an email from us soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Great, thank you.